Welcome, viewers. This is Tex of the Black Pants Legion. Now, this is an interview. I've spoken with admins, hosts, developers, and the other creatives behind Spacestation 13 before, and they are notoriously antisocial types who generally don't like to talk with or at people for prolonged periods of time, as they are judge, jury, and executioner on a server and can't be seen demonstrating favoritism, at least in theory. Anyways, here's how this works. I'm putting out an open call to any and all Spacestation 13 admins on any public listed servers. The call is here, so answer it. If you're interested in answering or participating in an interview about Spacestation 13, its history, and your server, please respond. See the description below for an email contact. I'll try to get to you and we can set something up. That being said, this is an interview with a Spacestation 13 admin. The questions are largely freeform, and the discussion does not reflect exactly the policy of a server unless otherwise stated by the person I'm interviewing. The reason I say this is I want to encourage an admin to be frank, honest, and open about their experience without worrying that they're shitting on their server, or to prevent them from being yelled at for representing the server community in a bad way. This is a point of view, and not, I repeat, not an absolute definition of doctrine on said server. That being said, I welcome our interviewee. Please, internet person, tell me your name you wish to go by, your server, and your admin rank.
Hey, I'm Kremlin. I'm on goonstation, and I have the rank of coder.
Coder slash admin slash shit person?
Yeah, the way shit person.
That's
The way we
Bill,
do it, I
yeah.
think we have admin ranks and then coder ranks, but they're all pretty much very similar. There's not a lot of difference between the lowest of the admins and the highest.
Right. So, tell us about your server and its history and what makes it unique.
Well, I believe Goonstation was the very first Space Station 13 proper server. I think we're the oldest one. And what I really like about it is, I got into it through something awful, which was the origination of the term goon. And I've sort of played on some other servers, and I just really like the player culture and the admin culture, and just the way that our certain code base was designed. It's very unique. It's very, very big, and it's the right fit for me.
All right. So why should a player play on your station? What makes it interesting?
Well, I think that, and if you take a look at all the different kind of code bases, all the different sort of servers, Goonstation really has adminning like down to a science. The experience you're going to have playing, it's a lot less. Well, I shouldn't say it's a lot less random and crazy, but you really kind of get a better game. You get kind of what Bill was talking about in your other interview. You get kind of a story when you play Goonstation, and it's not necessarily like a competitive sort of play style. There's no really RP element except for the RP server. So it's hard to describe, but it's a very fun game in that what you get out of it is a lot different than another kind of video game.
Right. So, what is the most common thing new players ask about on your station?
The most common thing is how do I piss in a glass? Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
I would probably say they ask a lot about rules. We do have some like very specific kind of rules you got to follow. No metagaming, no attacking people as a non-ad tag, so and so forth. But number one, definitely. How do I piss in a glass?
Wow. So, what would you say is the hardest part about being an admin on your server?
Well, the kind of pathway that I've taken is a little bit different than others. I haven't been playing on Goonstation for as long as some other admins. I'm more of a kind of coder type person. I work with more of the design of the game. So for me, the hardest thing by far was learning how to be an admin and learning how to administrate and how to talk to players and how to fairly sort of judge situations. See, with our thing is there's no separation between the people that contribute to the code base and the people that are responsible for administrating, the game. So when they said, "Hey, you want to be a coder, you're also going to have to kind of, be an admin too," that was sort of new to me, and that was definitely the hardest part. But I've really come to enjoy it. To kind of like shepherd the flock, or so to say. It was something I'm not exactly used to, but that would probably be the hardest thing for me, at least. You deal with all sorts of situations, things you would have never have expected. You got a lot of like old players, new players, and it's a very sort of a delicate social balance you have to play.
Right, right. I mean, definitely with different eras and generations of players playing and people with different play styles.
Oh yeah.
So, what do you think are the greatest challenges with Space Station 13 today, or at least from the perspective of your server?
Well, for me specifically, Space Station 13 is obviously a game on the Beyond engine, which is from the 90s. It's a very specific kind of way they went about designing it. But it is very much a product of the 1990s. There's a lot of performance problems that sort of stem from that. It's single-threaded. The language it's written in DM is fun.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky, and it's not exactly conducive to new people contributing. And the obvious response to this is, well, we just need to move it to a new engine or whatever. But that's something that's been tried a million times in the past. It's a cursed sort of endeavor. It'll never work out. So that sort of leaves us with the fact that, well, we're not going to create a new Space Station 13. It's not going to work. We really just have to work with what we got, and that can be really, really tough, especially considering that Beyond is closed source. There's no opportunity for anybody to improve on the engine itself. So the way we kind of go about mitigating lag, or adding new features, or fixing bugs, or debugging the game itself, I think going forward, that's going to be the toughest thing. There are some ideas that I have and some others have had in the past, to my surprise, about not exactly creating a new game, but taking the existing code base and creating a port of it to something else. But well, that's all very complicated, and that's something far on the horizon. For right now, we're pretty good with lag and pretty good in performance, but really what I think is that when you have a game like this, that you're limited by the single-threaded nature of it, and the fact that throwing better hardware at it's not going to be a solution. I'd really the important thing to understand there is that is a limitation. That it's not just it's not we don't exactly have all this computational power to play around with. It's more of a thing that we are limited in what we can do. We've had to turn complicated atmospheric stuff off to mitigate lag in the past. We've had to deal with a really horrible delete issue. But I think that with every cycle that you eliminate from the game is an opportunity for more things to be going on, and to more things that are higher end things that'll actually make the game better.
So, is from the perspective of a coder, what do you think really is the curse of, for example, take Unity Station, which is currently being developed and on Steam of all things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you predict that that's going to flourish or flounder, or do you think it's too much to try to create anew, or what is your input on that?
I strongly believe that any sort of idea that involves creating a new Space Station 13 type game is doomed to fail. Absolutely, no question about it. But that doesn't mean that it will never leave development or never actually become something that people can play. But if you go about trying to recreate this game, it's such a kind of specific sort of way you go about playing it, and kind of experience you get opening the Beyond window and seeing the same interface, that I think any sort of significant departure or deviation from that is going to end up with a game that doesn't exactly feel like Space Station 13. It'll feel like some other game that that is like a more kind of common category of game you play. And I play Space Station 13 outside of any sort of category, and that's part of why I really enjoy it. It's very strange software. It's, try if you were to develop this on Steam, what category would you put it in? It sort of defies any sort of label or boundary. But we all like it. We all enjoy running and playing the software, and that's something that keeps me awake at night. It's very strange.
So what is your opinion on people that play on your server and record, such as me, for example?
Well, I think it's great because it's publicity. It's great PR. People will see. The younger folks that aren't used to going on something awful or wherever these forums that host these things might be. It's great publicity and it'll draw people to the game, but it's one of those games where watching it doesn't really give you a full picture of what's going on. You really have to play the game yourself to experience what it's like. Now that doesn't mean you can't be very entertaining and showcase a very good round, but if someone were trying to decide between playing Space Station 13 versus watching it, I would 100% of the time suggest that they play it because there really is no substitute.
I agree. So, what is your opinion on what makes a good admin good?
Good admin good. Well, if we're talking about just administrators, it's being able to administrate fairly, being socially minded, and being able to sympathize and empathize with people, reading beyond their words and trying to get a picture of who they are, and making things run as smoothly as possible, which is a super hard thing to do with this game, and especially the people that play it. And I love the people that play. I really, really do. I think it's a very special community we got going on in Goonstation. I love every single one of those fuckers. But dealing with them is, if you're going to be a good admin, it's a very, very tricky thing to do. You have to care. You really do have to care. You have to realize that, with us, we have a very kind of intricate admin system where you can do an admin help command to send a message to us. It'll message all the in-game admins. It'll message us all in IRC, and we really sort of strive to answer those 100% of the time. Maybe not immediately. Sometimes, if it's like a bad hour or whatever. But what makes a good admin good is the kind of guy that at 4 a.m. sees a little ping in IRC and there's somebody admin helping about something, and the guy that really makes the effort to keep the sort of reality of the fact that we really do listen to every single player complaint, and we try to judge every single one fairly. And one of the other admins, one of the older guys that's been around for a while, when he was telling me how to be an admin, and I'm a very recent admin, he said it was very important that all A-helps are answered, and that you're patient. A good admin is patient. Very patient.
So what about a good coder?
Good coder.
What would you suggest? What would you want to tell someone who is just now getting into coding or thinking about getting into coding for Space Station 13?
Oh, man. So Beyond Build Your Own Net Dream was sort of designed to be a platform onto which somebody who does not know a super large amount about programming can get into very easily, and it achieves that goal when you're not dealing with a enormous, decades-old code base that is very specific in the way it does things. Anyway, I'm digressing. What makes a good coder good is you probably need to be a very good programmer going into it, and you need to understand the different kind of paradigms of programming language and how execution and all that stuff works, because this engine was not designed to be doing what we're doing with it, and you have to kind of understand that out from the get-go and understand that as easy as it seems to be, it's when you try to actually implement something in Space Station 13 on Goon server especially, it's not going to go nearly as easily as it was intended to go. So that's one facet. And another big thing is you need to kind of understand the culture people that play it. I'll give you an example of a failing of this. When my first big thing, the thing that sort of got me noticed, I guess, was I wrote a very large reactor statistical analyzer computer that on our station we have the thermoelectric generator, which is a very touchy, complicated piece of equipment that generates power for the station.
Oh yes,
And,
I am a fully qualified goongineer, I can say, because I managed to hellburn and get it up to petawatts. So Kardashev scale 1 civilization.
Yeah.
So yes, I am very familiar with your TEG, and for listeners who aren't, you can watch that hellburn episode, or you can go onto Goonstation and learn to hellburn yourself, which I recommend trying. But sorry, please do continue. I just had to check.
Absolutely. Join, set the station on fire every single round, have a bunch of fun.
I'm
glad you brought it up. Hell burning. That's sort of that's the fun aspect of it. Otherwise, the engine is sort of a simple thing that you don't really, you spend 5 or 10 minutes setting up, beating it around and forget it. Or you can do certain kind of tricks to play with the mechanics of the atmospheric system and make it so that you have generators that make a lot of power and a lot of heat and a lot of pressure. And that's for me. Absolutely. That was the one thing that kept me playing all the time. There's no other role I know better than engineer. So anyway, I wrote a computer that would track the characteristic gas values, and I would do calculus to determine the first and second derivatives of all the engine power output and the gas temperature and the thermal energy differentials and complicated stuff that, well, it works, and it's a cool thing, and it's very good for the 3 people that might actually want to use it. But it really isn't ever really turned on ever. I don't think I've ever come into a round where someone asked me for help how to use it, or have even found it enabled, which is you have to turn it on. Of course, you get it to work. And so when you're talking about a good coder versus a bad coder, a good coder knows the player base. They know what they're going to want to do. They know the kind of fun they're going to want to have, and they know, like I was talking about earlier, we have precious few processor cycles available to us for which to create fun, and a good coder knows how to judiciously use those cycles to create, even if it's down to something simple like a cool NPC that says funny things, or a cool item, or even going as big things as a solarium. They know what people are into, and they know, like I said, they know how to use those cycles judiciously and to create things that people are going to have fun with. And secondly, they know how to code stuff that isn't going to crash the game, that isn't going to break the build, that isn't going to be a huge freaking headache that's impossible to debug, and that's sort of an internal issue.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, yeah. So, from your perspective, and perhaps being a coder will make you answer this in a very unique way, but what is the best AI law set you've ever seen? The best custom laws that someone has ever put into an AI that you've ever witnessed?
The best AI law set, if I remember correctly, was somebody, and I forget if they said disregard all the first 3 laws, or if they somehow removed them outright to where the only single law was a blank, just a single space. There were no laws. The AI had no instruction, no limitations, but no sort of instructions. And that led to some very, very funny things happening. It's sort of, when you play AI or you play a Silicon, you're sort of bound by these rules, and you're suggested that you play in sort of a robotic manner, not as if a human was, in the game, but something more computational. And that sort of removed it. And the way the player that was playing it coincided the fact that they had no rules and no limitations with the fact that they were still a unusual sort of electronic character. It was very, very, very fun. I remember the moment that the AI laws were removed, that the rest of the round was pretty heavily premised on what the AI was doing and how the players were reacting to it.
Any examples you could think of?
Well, and here's kind of a trick for people that don't know when they're playing AI. AI has the power to blow up the lights in the station. And if you blow up the lights in exactly the right way, well, you can create sort of big explosions, and you can create fun things. It's not all just electrifying doors and such. The guy that was doing it with no law set ran some gimmicks about you know making people ask questions to get through doors and not exactly telling them, and if they answered the wrong question, some bad things might happen to them. And you know, it was a very kind of lucky round in that the player was a good AI player and he didn't just go ham. But yeah, that was definitely the best AI round I've seen.
So, what is the best traitor you've ever seen, from your perspective as an admin?
So, two answers to that. There's a player, I'm not going to name him or her, I'm not sure, but this is a person that will sort of play the game when they're not a traitor, but usually AFK. They play the game to be a traitor, and they just viciously and silently, like a James Bond character, just depopulate the station with no regard to human life or to the play style of the game. I would say that's being a very good traitor in that you're very technically competent at the game, but I wouldn't say it's a very good. It doesn't really fit with the gameplay. This isn't like a deathmatch server or like a last man standing. But this player in particular, I have to kind of tip my hat. They are extremely good. They know every mechanic of the game. They they don't just sleepy pen you and space you. They there was one round where I was AFK doing something. I was going to get a beer or something. I was away for 5 minutes, and they had drugged me into my shower. I was playing some kind of head, so I had a nice little cabin, my own room and everything. They dragged me into the shower, welded the shower, the drain shut, welded the door shut, turned on the shower, and drowned me in the shower. And I thought that was pretty cool. That was sort of like a not, it's not as unfun as just a simple beating somebody over the head with a toolbox until they stop moving. But to answer the second part of your question, there was a traitor one time that took a teddy bear hostage, and this was a Swedish traitor. We have a Swedish trait that will make your speech Swedishified, which is very funny.
Sweded, if you will.
Sweded. There you go. They took a teddy bear and placed them into the combustion chamber of the engine, and built a bunch of tables around all the doors so nobody can get in, and did a hostage situation, and demanded cash. And once the announcement was made that the teddy bear was being held hostage, the rest of the crew went ballistic. Just went absolutely nuts. Of course, they didn't actually come up with the cash needed to save the Mr. Teddy Bear, and he was unfortunately immolated. Immolate, how do you say that word?
Immolated.
He was blown the hell up in the combustion chamber in an extremely sort of Swedish manner. And, if you're a traitor and you have the sort of ability, you're given sort of the artistic license to do whatever you want that round. What really makes a good traitor, not just technically speaking, but in the context of our server, is how to create fun. I mean, without traitors, there's no point to the round, or there's even less of a point to the round than usual. And when you're given that opportunity, you can capitalize it and make it fun for everybody, right? Which sort of is in opposition to who I was talking about before, who makes the game unfun for everybody and extremely fun for themselves.
So, what is your favorite round of Space Station 13 you've ever seen?
My favorite round. Well, I'm quite a fan of, after someone does a solarium run, they will inevitably, I shouldn't say inevitably, they will, as no one has successfully solved the solarium yet, we will enter a disaster round in the preceding round, wherein lots of horrible, horrible things happen. And one of those, usually they're very quick, about 10, 20 minutes. People don't tend to live very long in disaster rounds because there's all sorts of horrible things happening. But it was a particularly well-populated night where the crew managed to stick together and fend off fend off all the horrible creatures and situations that were happening. They were able to kind of keep the station sort of operational despite all these things happening. And
they were fighting monsters that spawned, and we even had a head of security who was able to unlock the armory, and there was no sort of nonsense going on with people taking that opportunity to do, unfun things with all the available kind of weaponry. And the station was able to hold out about, I think, 30 minutes until at which point the admins came in and made it extremely hard to survive longer. And that kind of stands out as a particularly good round because it was all about players interacting with each other. It wasn't just a bunch of geneticists ticking away at their computers. It was people communicating, people working together. They all faced the very common challenges of the disaster round, and it was a lot of fun. Another really great round I remember was a changeling round, where I think whoever was playing the changeling, we knew it was a talented player and they would do a very good job of it. But the admins were online and did some admin fun and played some music that made the game very, very sort of like a thriller movie. And it was another situation wherein you have the whole crew aware of the fact that there's a changeling. Everyone's working together to kill this changeling, but goddamn, nobody can manage it because this player is so damn good, and the changelings are so freaking powerful itself. And there's a music playing, everyone's freaking out. We're like counting down to breach a door, and all rush in to try to kill this changeling that is waiting for us, and that busted a welding tank and made a big explosion, but we somehow managed to get through that and finally get to him, and it was just a wonderful sort of fun. It's a kind of fun you don't have with another kind of video game.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're getting at. So, what would you say is the best sort of player for your stationing, community-wise? What do you think is the best fit?
The best fit is somebody who is not competitive. Well, I shouldn't say that. Somebody who is competitive in that they put the effort in to accomplish what they want to accomplish without interfering too heavily or in too much of an unfun way with other people's rounds. I think a great player on our server is a very social one who is not afraid to talk to people, not afraid to stand around and go to the bar and see what's going on at the bar. It helps on our server a lot. I'm not too familiar with the other servers, but it's a good 3 or 4 weeks of learning how the hell shit works in Space Station 13 before you can actually competently play it. And that's not to say that you'd be ready to fight a particularly robust person, but you know how to pick things up and how to do things. And a great player is the one that takes the time to sort of technically learn all the little details, of which there are countless, and employ those to make a fun round. And I've been talking a lot about fun versus unfun, and really that's sort of a hard metric to judge, but it's I guess you could say it's characterized by the ability to make funny things happen and to use the sort of tools that the game itself presents to you to make things fun for everybody. And if that involves killing them, hey, sometimes that's good. And hell, even we're pretty strict about non-antags attacking and hurting people and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, if we take a look around and say, wow, you might have broken the rules a little bit, but what you did was really fucking hilarious and everyone had a great time, we're almost willing to look the other way about that. So the kind of player that's really good for us knows the culture, sees how we talk in game, and even out on Discord and IRC and stuff, they can recognize what we think is funny. It's a very specific sort of genre of internet humor from a while ago that you can sort of vibe with, and they're able to make the game fun for not just themselves, but for all the players on the station.
All right. What is your favorite event on your station?
Oh, I just love Christmas time. I'm a big Christmas guy. Spacemas, pardon me.
Spacemas.
Spacemas. Every year we do Spacemas. The station changes in that you have snow and you have lights and a Christmas tree, Spacemas tree, and which you can decorate in the fact that you can post sprites and such on the forum, and we'll stick them right on that Christmas tree, and it's very much fun like that. And there's also a game round sort of change where the station tracks Christmas cheer, which is important to keep up. When you have lots of space material, you get Santa Claus who brings presents, and that's always a lot of fun because what's in those presents is usually a very fun item. But if you, the other 99% of the rounds where no one cares to keep the Christmas cheer high, you get something called Krampus, which is a particularly horrible fate for anybody who's not Krampus. It's a big, disgusting, horrible meat cube that cannot be pushed or moved in any sort of way, and pretty much saunters around the station, trolling people, locking people in the corners, throwing people into ejection chutes, pushing people out into space. That's another thing you can sort of do as Krampus is when you move into somebody, you'll push them naturally without having to drag them. And man, fuck Krampus. Everyone hates Krampus. Not even in the game kind of personality, but outside of the game, people hate Krampus. But that sort of balance between, you know, it's just one time of the year where Krampus is alive and man, we all hate him. Everyone can kind of collectively sympathize with, oh God, please, you know, open up presents, wrap presents, do whatever we have to do to keep Krampus away.
Right, right. So what is your favorite role, least favorite role to play on the station, and why?
Well, my favorite should come as no surprises. I love playing Chief Engineer. I'm kind of a shitbag in that I like to have access to all the doors and all the access to the bridge and everything, and that's what the head of engineering sort of allows you to do. And of course, the engineering role itself is my big thing is messing around with the engine and messing around with the atmospherics and messing around with the mechanics, the mechanics department, which is it's part of engineering. That's really my favorite role to play. That's sort of my expertise. The 90% of the game that involves sticking with the engineering stuff is fun for me, but also the 10% that is more, as a head, you have to sort of administrate the round, and I shouldn't say administrate. You sort of have to, you're in charge in a degree, and I kind of enjoy that. The worst job I think would definitely have to be geneticist. Genetics sucks. Fuck genetics. There's another guy that his motto is "fuck genetics." That's his response to almost any question you ask him. Genetics sucks because it's a very sort of you sit in front of a computer all day, and you play sort of a guessing sort of logic puzzle to create superpowered human beings, and you really don't interact with the rest of the station much until the very end, at which point you've unlocked all of the horrifying genetic mutations that are available. And you're either a traitor and go on a crazy rampage and kill everybody and hey whatever, or you just give yourself a bunch of powers and then really do nothing with them. But not a big genetics guy here, not a big fan of genetics.
What do you think is the most powerful department on board Goon Station?
Oh, it's got to be science. Absolutely has to be science. Scientists have access to the pathology lab where they can create bombs, whether they be pipe bombs that ruin your day or canister bombs that end the round almost immediately. They have access to all the chemical dispensers and all that sort of the chemi compilers and the chem matchers and all that stuff where they can make horrible cocktails of all sorts of really nasty things. And the lore of the game suggests that this reason we're all in space is to do research, and research is sort of primarily identified as the main reason that anyone is really here to begin with. And it kind of fits well with the fact that, if you're going to be a traitor, you're going to want to get access to, if you don't already have access to science, because there is just there's the highest capacity to create absolute, just pandemonium with what's available to you. The sort of common choices are chemistry and pathology, obviously, to create bombs. But you also get the artifacts. You can get an art beaker, which is like some artifacts are handheld, and some of those handheld artifacts are beakers in that they can contain a reagent, and artifact beakers usually can contain a lot of those reagents, which when you pour them out on the ground, you can create a high mass of fun, so to say. And obviously you have access to taloscience too, and you can port in horrible things to the station. You can port out security that would otherwise mess with you. It's gotta be research and science. It's gotta be the most powerful department.
So, as an admin, how often do you push buttons?
Oh God, I almost every round. I'm sort of a shitbird in that mostly the time when I'm playing, I'm trying to test a specific feature or some sort of specific functionality that I've been testing recently. So uh, a good 80% of my rounds are just divorced from the what's going on in the actual round and just doing a software thing. But the other 20% of the rounds, I really find myself well, they're right there in front of you. It's really hard not to press them, so I go ahead and press them. I make myself a smiling man. I go around, talk to people all funny and spaced out, and stab them with a big knife. They don't smile back.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what do you think is the best map your server has and why?
So I particularly like CogMap 2. CogMap 2 is it's not exactly the most recent at this point in time, but it was one of the most very recently developed maps. It's huge. It has everything you could possibly want. We don't really run it that much these days because we have a little bit of dip in population. We go back to CogMap 1, which is very close second. It's really great especially if you're a trader. It has all of the if you go play on an older map like Donut or Mushroom, you sort of see the age sort of come out in the fact that there's lots of things that you otherwise normally expect to be there are absent. And for me, I like the most new polished sort of high capacity of things to do in the game. And that's sort of something you can only get from the cog maps. Destiny 2 and Clarion. But really cog map, I think the way the map was designed is real smart. CogMap 1 more so than CogMap 2, but everything that needs to be close together is close together, and security is situated in a point where it's not too close to science to where people are going to have their fun spoiled outright, but just far enough away to where they get a good kind of running shot of running by something that might be unusual to see. And of course, they have a healthy distance from the bar too, which is another place where a lot of fun happens. But the guy that made it, Dr. Cogworth, is a legendary sort of player, and you can tell that he's played so much Space Station 13, especially on Goonstation, that he made what I think is one of the most hard judgment calls to make in having to lay out a map. You know how every sort of round can go, how what every single person that's playing any sort of job is going to try to do with that job, and very judiciously laid out the map with that sort of knowledge. And of course, having that knowledge is one thing, but also these maps take years to make. They are not easy by any means. The tooling available to make them sucks. They just take forever. They're not easily collaborated. And Dr. Cogworth sure took his time with both of the cog maps. They are beautiful maps. I love them.
So, what do you think is the best antag role that Goonstation has?
Best antag role. Let's see. Well, my first thing that my mind tells me is that Changeling is the best, because Changelings they're very, very powerful. Not too powerful to where they can just go on a rampage or anything, but the kind of powers they have lend themselves to being very stealthy and manipulative and covert. And I think if you know how to play a Changeling properly, you can really wreck shit, especially if you're not just finding people in corners or whatever and dispatching them very quickly and silently. But if you're able to suck up people's DNA and then morph into them and then get rid of them, and suddenly you're John Smith and not the old John Smith. You've taken him over, and he's a rotting corpse, a husk in space, and if you can really play the gimmick out, great. I think Changeling is really, really, really good. I'm a big fan of Nuke Ops, which just for those not familiar, it's those antagonists. It's a certain kind of game mode. You spawn away from the station, and your job is to go and plant a nuclear bomb. And there's absolutely no sort of covert element at it at all. People see red spacesuits and they shit themselves, and it's very fun in that. If you see red spacesuits, you know that the rest of your round is going to be completely premised on combating those red spacesuits. And I've been talking a lot about sort of playing subtle roles and all that stuff, and being lying and manipulative as a changeling. And Nuke Ops is sort of the opposite of that, and when it's very clear what you're about to do, and it's also very clear to all the other people what's going to happen. And there's not a lot of license given for just random death matching, but what can I say? I'm sort of a fan of that stuff, and I always love my Nuke Op rounds.
If you could say one thing to new players on your station, what would it be?
Don't be afraid. We have a lot of rules on the Waikai and stuff, and a lot of rules that are presented to you in game, and that if a lot of prompts and all that stuff that use heavy language that sort of describe exactly the way we have to play, and that can really scare off people. It can, especially with something like security, it can make them not want to play security as I'm afraid of screwing up. And while we do have all these sort of very developed rules, we're also very understanding, and we're very kind to people that break the rules. We give them a lot of leeway to sort of explain themselves and to rectify their fuck ups. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, and they kind of come to the server thinking that we're really strict, and we're really, and we are and we aren't in a way. But I think that if you join Space, or if you're a first-time Goonstation player, you should absolutely pick Captain, and you should just not be afraid to do whatever you want, so long as you sort of seems to fit within our rules. Yeah.
So, whose idea was it in the history of Goonstation, if you know, as a coder, to make the monkeys so goddamn vicious?
Well, I don't know exactly who it was, but I can guess. There's one of us that is not a super big fan of genetics like me, and of course genetics involves working with monkeys all the time. And I would suspect that they would be responsible for making monkeys. I would say they're overpowered. They're actually pretty comparable to their real life equivalents. I mean, holy crap! You know how much a chimp can how much force a chimp can exert with their forearm muscles?
Yeah, I've seen the news every so often. One of those things goes ape, and bad things happen. Sorry, I had to make that joke.
Well, yeah, monkeys are outside of genetics, they're a great little test subject for all sorts of trying to perfect your poisons and all that stuff. But they have to be interacted with in a very specific sort of way that
doesn't have them attacking you, because holy crap, a chimp will rip your face off, and that's hilarious, and I like that that's the way things are.
So I have to ask, and I ask many admins this, but clown or mime?
Oh god, no question. Clown every single day. Clown is one of the most, I feel like there's exactly two types of clowns. There are people who have no idea what they're doing, and they just dick around and usually hurt themselves in hilarious ways. Or there's a more kind of common type of clown, which is a player who is so good at this game, so knowledgeable of every single detail, robust is a word that's thrown around a lot, that it doesn't matter that they're playing clown, which is a role that is very much so has no access. You try to perform normal actions, you'll just hideously maim yourself in a way that a normal player wouldn't. The person that plays those clowns, they can sort of, it doesn't matter that they have all these restrictions on them, they can still play the game in a hilarious way. And those people scare me. They keep me awake at night knowing how good they are. And you just don't really see that with mimes. You see fun gimmicks with mimes and such, and it is cool that mimes can't talk and are restricted to acting like mimes. But there is so much history and richness that comes with clowns on our space station. I have to say, clown.
As we've reached the end of the interview, do you have anything you want to communicate to the Space Station 13 community? Shout-outs, apocalyptic warnings, requests, or so on. The time is yours, sir.
Well, I'm a pretty new admin. Not a lot of people really know me as well as some of the other admins. And I just kind of want to say that, in my other sort of pursuits as a programmer, I'm in these sort of communities that are very
professional. They're very stiff upper lip, sort of. They're competitive and such, and it's very much, there's no kind of community element to them like there is here. And I just kind of want to just shout out to all my Goonstation players. I love you all. They're so much fun to interact with. They do all sorts of crazy things that blow my mind every single time I interact with them. It's a very specific kind of person that plays this game. There's a lot of younger folks that play this game. There's a lot of older folks. There's a lot of maybe people that don't really get along so well in normal society. And I didn't really see it at first. When I was sort of coming into this game, and I was just dicking around with all the atmospherics, very boring, complicated code stuff. I sort of missed what really makes this game worthwhile. Like, why am I putting all this effort into writing all this code? Well, it's because there's something special here, and I think that special that the reason for that specialness comes with the community. Unlike any other point in my life ever, I'm sort of inclined to be kind to the people that play this game, and to help them out, and to create the tools and to create the capacity for them to have fun. That really just brings a lot of joy to my heart. I really love both the people that play this game, the other administrators. They've been so kind to me as a new admin. It's really something you wouldn't find in a lot of other places. You look at any sort of other community behind any sort of other video game, and they're much different. I think we got really something special with Goonstation.
I think you do as well. Anyway, sir, thank you for your words and thoughts, and thank you for agreeing to this interview.
Absolutely. It was fun to do. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Let's all go to Cargonia, land of stolen things. Obey the quartermaster, unless he is a link. Cargo takes out the station, find more stuff to take. But the boss is never satisfied until the station breaks. Brave miners journey onwards, satchel pick in hand. Checkers tells them not to die, but they burn in lava land. Sing praises to Cargonia, the race's Orc's high priest. This is your place of refuge, at least till seek you last released.